What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new show here at the Geekiverse, built around Disney Plus's Andor, which premiered today, the first 3 episodes. We're calling the show Built on Hope, a nice callback to Rogue One, which inevitably ties into this show. I'm Josiah Leroy. With me today, we've got the full cast and crew, the full Rebel Alliance, Mr. Baba Yaga, John Fick. How you doing, Johnny?
I'm doing great. I'm doing excellent. I got my my Pills Mafia here to celebrate the Buffalo Bills' incredible win on Monday night the other day. I've got my beautiful Star Wars glass thematic for this show and for my buddy JT, so I'm feeling great tonight.
Looking great, too. Speaking of which, JT, good to be back. Good to be talking Star Wars with you. How you feeling today?
Oh, good to be here with my Poland Springs, beautiful.
Oh yeah,
Take it easy.
Beer here.
Relax.
You know, I gotta take it a step at a time. Happy to be here.
It's totally ridiculous.
Oh God, you're gonna be.
That has straight vodka in it.
He's hitting the hard stuff. I'm drinking literal alcohol. We're like, Jesus, calm down on the Red Bull here.
You guys slow down. It's sugar free, all right?
Yeah,
I gotta do it. Listen, I got up at 5 a.m. today to watch this thing so we could talk about it. I'm exasted. Tim Talbot. Tim, that's a beautiful hoodie, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. But here, when it already watch underneath.
Oh, this is PG Tim.
I got some Star Wars.
Let's go.
Star Wars Buffalo. Good old 26 shirts.
Good old 26 shirts.
But excited to have some more Star Wars content. We recorded the last Star Wars episode, and I was in a little bit of a depression there, so I'm glad to have some more Star Wars stuff.
Man, I forget how much I've missed Star Wars in my life until I
also
boot
got
up
the Star Wars class. JT.
Right. So I boot up Disney Plus and I see that new Star Wars opening that they've been using in like that little song with the droids and stuff like that. I'm like, man, it's so good to be back.
It's so funny. I was watching that obviously this morning, and when that came across, I was like, who's going to be the last character, right? Because it always ties into the show, and it was the droid, right? B.
Oh, was it? I didn't even pay attention. I always I never pick up on that until a couple episodes. And I know we got 3 today, but a couple weeks I should say.
Yeah, so it's funny, like when that introduced with Mandalorian a few years back, I was like, it's whatever. But now I've come to really enjoy it.
Yeah,
like
me too.
It's not quite there, but it's almost like when you heard the 20th Century Fox drum beat, or you got the long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It means Star Wars is about to happen, which is always a good thing.
Yep.
But so we are going to talk about the first 3 episodes of Andor here, reactions to the brand new series. We did this with Kenobi a few months back. Every week we would get together and we called our show Hello There, fittingly for Obi-Wan. And I mean, what a series that was. Go back and listen to that, or watch the videos at youtube.com/thegeekiverse if you missed out on it. Also, thanks to everyone who's tuned in and joined us tonight in the chat at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. Andor. So a show that I feel like, as much as a Star Wars show could fall a little bit under the radar, this one was that. We've talked about it. John, you've said it, that you predicted this was going to be kind of a sleeper hit. This is a different feel for Star Wars. Obviously, it's got ties to Rogue One. It's Tony Gilroy who ran the show for Rogue One. He's back with this series. We got Diego Luna back as Cassian Andor, and we'll have a few others throughout this 12-episode season. But a different kind of refreshing take on Star Wars. If I could sum it up quickly, we'll go around and get reactions, but this was very different from anything we've seen, especially recently. And what I did appreciate, despite my love of Star Wars and all the callbacks and all of the cameos that we'll get in the other series, this had none of it so far, and it leaned on nothing. You could even call this anything else. It could not be Star Wars. It was just a good show for what it was. But John, why don't we go to you first? Reactions on what you thought and what you were thinking for these first 3 episodes.
You stole the entire pitch right out of my mouth. The first, I did take notes on this one. The first word on my notes is just refreshing. It is refreshing to have a Star Wars story being told in this galaxy that doesn't rely on the Skywalkers. It doesn't rely on characters. There's no, we're not guessing which episode is Vader going to finally appear, or which episode is Ahsoka Tano, or when does Grogu, when do we find out this? There's none of that. This is not about Easter eggs and about plot points that we already know. This is a fresh, non-Skywalker related, non-lightsaber related story that just happens to take place in this galaxy. Obviously, it leads directly into Rogue One, which leads directly into the Skywalker saga, right? So, of course, tangentially related, but we're not expecting those story points and touch points throughout this series. I loved it, man. I thought it again super refreshing to get a different kind of Star Wars story. Even pacing in terms of cinematography, it was almost shot more cinematically than any Star Wars show has been so far. And I think a lot of that is like, I don't think they use the volume for any of this. If you're familiar with the way they shoot like The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett and the way Kenobi was shot, the volume has like a very specific look to it. It's cool, and especially when it was new, like it lets them do a lot of stuff they couldn't before, but it also has its limits. Like if you watch Kenobi, there's like a specific vibe to that show, and it's similar in The Mandalorian, especially night shots. They can't get the sense of scale that you can get with like a live action set. It was refreshing to see that in Andor. You've got these pretty cool set pieces. I forget what the planet is called. It starts with an F. What's the planet?
Oh, Fondor, I think.
No, It's not Fondor. It's not.
Yeah, Andor.
Andor's not from Fondor. I'm almost positive. It's not. I do think it starts with an F though. Whatever, we'll figure it out.
Aaron, honestly, I thought he was just gonna go with that. I was like, if I say it confidently,
I think there's like an X involved.
I think it's Farron or something.
We're getting closer, but it doesn't matter.
No, definitely Fondor.
We're on our way.
That planet feels like a cinematic Star Wars planet. Like it was built well. The set pieces were there, and I just thought the narrative was super interesting. I think that narratively, I've never been more interested in what's happening next in a Star Wars show. And that's not to say that I didn't maybe like other Star Wars shows more because they were about to give me Obi-Wan Kenobi in flashbacks to the prequels and stuff like that. Like those had those incredible highs, but they were relying on so much else. They were relying on nostalgia and things like that. This is just a really interesting narrative with characters that we don't know much about, and I'm all in. I'm loving it.
So do you remember the opening planet in Jedi Fallen Order? Kind of that shipyard.
Yeah.
I thought this was that at first.
It's very similar, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, what a cool tie-in that would have been. But anyway, well said, John. The volume, you know what movie they shot portions of in the volume recently that JT loves is Thor Love and Thunder. So yeah, that's cool. John, you also just sorry, I had to do it. It's truthful though. So John, you described this in our group chat earlier as thrilling,
right,
which I think means different things, or at least we perceived it differently. Can you elaborate a little bit on your feelings with that?
Yeah, I guess I didn't mean like this was thrilling where I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, but just they did a good job at telling me this three episode arc felt like an actual arc. Like I almost think if they would have released one episode, I would have had a different taste in my mouth because it would have been a very slow build up to that, that eventual chase scene we get at the end, the escape there. I just thought it was a very, very well paced thriller. Again, we're a third of the way through this series, so plenty to go. But so far, I like what I'm seeing in terms of thrills, in terms of like that cat and mouse game and stuff like that. Yeah, thrilling was just the first thing that came to mind when I stopped episode 3 after the rush of what just happened after all of that build up. Just felt thrilling.
I think you have a really good point with it. Had you only gotten one episode, this would have been different, at least perception wise. For me, it was getting that. At least the second episode, the third episode, where I was like, okay, this feels a little more complete, even though we've got a long way to go, right? So smart move. I know there were other reasons for that delay, but good to have all three of those go at the same time. JT, what did you feel on these first 3 episodes?
Yeah, so I'm with John, right? Like I think it is not a typical it doesn't feel like Star Wars, but in a good way. Right, it is refreshing. It's new content. It's the espionage kind of feel. I kind of compare it to Captain America: The Winter Soldier, if you want to go to Marvel, right? Like more of the
I can see what you're saying.
Grounded,
yes.
And that's fine, and that's different, and I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't have it in my top series of Star Wars or content of Star Wars at all, but I see where John's at, right? It is refreshing to have a story that's simply focused on that character and his development. He was one of my favorite characters in Rogue One, right? I mean, I think all of us can say the same.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jin being a key piece of that too, but I'm with John as well. I hate the idea of depending on cameos. Like I go back to all the way to like WandaVision with Marvel, right? For me, I was like, Mephisto's coming. Everybody thinks this guy's coming, and it's a whole thing. He never comes, right? So it's nice to not have anything to look forward to, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's see how they're building their story and building that character and how he gets. Because I think he's like kind of. It's not too far before he actually starts joining the rebels, right? Like he's around.
Yeah, it's a similar age. I think
now,
I think it's like 5 years or something like that. It's a couple of years.
Right.
And we know that. I mean, this is the start of the rebellion. That's where this is going. And one thing that I forgot to mention that I really like is this is a longer show for a Disney Star Wars show. I mean, your Obi-Wans and your Mandalorians are they're 6 to 8 episodes. Some of those episodes of Mando were like 20 something minutes. Like, it's a shorter series. We know this is 12 episodes in 2 seasons. So we've just gotten 3 episodes. We had a bit of a slow burn, but then a pretty interesting narrative piece there. I think that I love what Disney's doing with experimenting in giving season and episode lengths to shows that make sense, not just fitting everything into this bucket where it's got to be 10 episodes, 10 episodes, whatever, not just for the sake of it. Let's squeeze that story into this little box, almost like you kind of have to do with movies. You have to take that story and squeeze it into a little box. They're letting these series dictate how long they need to be. So I'm excited for 12 episodes and 2 seasons of the show.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys talked, or Joe, you mentioned a group text of what John was saying, right? Like, I think I went after I texted you guys when I finished watching it. I was like kind of iffy on it. And I think Joe, you're kind of the same boat. Not that you hated it, not that you loved it. But I started to watch Rogue One right after, and I'm like, okay, maybe I like this a little more than I thought. You know what I mean? Maybe I needed that refresher of Cassian and wanting to know more about him. I didn't know I wanted to, but now this is making me want to know more about him and how he got there, right? Because he's so established when a Rogue One starts. I'm like, oh, he's a captain. I forgot he was a captain in Rogue One for the Rebels, and he was an assassin as well. Like, how did he get there? And now I'm a little more excited to see where it goes. So I would say I'm preemptively not going to say it's bad or good, right? I'm very middling.
Yeah, it's early to tell. If anyone were to make a definitive statement, if it's good or bad, you'd be silly. You're a quarter of the way there.
Right. We're in the first act, there's got to be time here. I'm sure I'm going to rewatch this before next week to really let that stew again. Where I'm at is I like it. I'm sure, being the crazy Star Wars fanboy that I am, admittedly, I'll end up loving it to some degree. But the whole thing, it's funny, like we talked about it not resting on its laurels or really like panicking and having to call back to something else. I was thinking like Book of Boba Fett, like, it's so funny how that just went off the rails. And by the way, some of the best episodes were there because it was the Mandalorian again.
It was already a callback of a series. It was already hey, you've always wanted Boba, so we're going to give you a Boba show. Like, nostalgia to the max for a lot of people. And like, they still had to cut away and divert our attention and give us Mando and Grogu and Luke and stuff like that. Like, it was, it's
just bizarre. It was totally like it was shot and written. It wasn't like week to week, and they were like, "Oh, this is not going how we thought." Mandalorian, get back in here.
Exactly.
So interesting. Tim, what did you think of Andor so far?
Well, I haven't told anyone. Said the group text going, and I was like,
saving it
for this show. I'm kind of on the board more with John and Joe. I'm very happy they're going this direction. So a lot of people may complain because you're not getting a lot of the typical Star Wars feels with a show like this, but I want them to get away from that. I'm tired of hearing about the Skywalker saga. Like, I want something new in Star Wars, and they're going to a new direction at some point in the future. I bet this is more of like, hey, we're starting to prepare you that, hey, this isn't going to be all about lightsabers and stormtroopers like it and Darth Vader. Like, it's going to have pieces, but they're making it their own show, which I really like.
Both can exist.
Right. Give me something new. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would like something new.
Right.
And this to me is something new.
I'll go out and say, like, I hope we don't see a single lightsaber in this series. I hope we do not see one lightsaber.
Right.
I don't think that we're going to, right? Like, that was the whole thing with Rogue One until the end, where they were like, hey, it's Doomsday. The Rebel Alliance is on the run, and no one's coming to save you. No Jedi's coming to save you from the sky. And that's kind of, how it happened. Obviously, we know what happened with A New Hope, but John, you took the words out of my mouth. It can definitely coexist. I appreciate what you're saying too, Tim. Like, hey, let's see something fresh. And you're a big fan of the High Republic. So is John.
Yes.
Which is going to pivot away from that.
Right.
But yeah, like for me, I'm like, hey, give me something High Republic, but also give me a Darth Vader miniseries. I love all of it. And they don't have to go one way or another, right? Disney's got all these resources. They've got this awesome streaming service in Disney Plus, and probably no shortage of ideas and people who would want to have this shot at Star Wars. So like the future is bright for Star Wars. I think there's a lot in the pipeline that's going to be awesome. I mean, for better or worse, whatever you feel about Last Jedi, even Rian Johnson confirmed his trilogy is still alive. So like there's a lot of content. You got Patty Jenkins movie, all these series. But this seems like a nice way to kind of pivot off the path just a little bit And Rogue One is so beloved. We saw it in our rankings on Star Wars Reviewed. It was up there top 3, I believe.
Yeah, probably.
And
Yeah.
even in this movie, with certain callbacks to Rogue One, like the text on screen, like that only started.
Yes,
that started in Rogue One, or like it said 5 BBY, which is 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, which is in A New Hope. So there was a lot of that going on. And I gotta say too, like we got to the end of some of these episodes, and they were paced really well. But I was like, oh gosh, the credits are rolling already, which to me speaks to how engaged I was, because sometimes it's like, all right, I love this episode of Mandalorian. It's probably about done now. It was just like I was glued to every little detail to learn about these characters, to figure out where they were really in the time frame within that context of 5 years. And I can't wait to learn more about it.
Yeah, every episode was basically a cliffhanger, because it wasn't like each episode's not telling its own story. And again, I know that all of these series are sort of that way, but we can think back to a show like Obi-Wan, and we can say, oh, remember the episode where Vader drags the person through the sand, and remember the episode where we get the flashback, and remember the episode. Like, this is not going to have that. This is not going to be, remember the one where, Cassian, maybe in season 2 eventually, remember the one where Cassian meets K2SO, right? Like, the show doesn't exist to give us those touch points. This show exists to tell us one narrative. Like, at the end of every episode, it was a cliffhanger, and like, play ready to go, and like at the end of that third one, I'm like, no, dang it, like let me play again, I want to keep going. So
if I would have just saw that first episode, I wouldn't have been, if they would have ended the way the first episode is, I would have been like, okay, like I'm not really excited for even the second. I was still okay on like they're getting to where they want to go. The third episode I was like, okay, like I'm in, like this is cool.
I
the
get
first
that.
Episode was like,
I'm definitely higher on the first.
It's weird. Yeah.
I was in from the get go. Like I knew it was a slow burn, and I felt it, but like I was so interested in what the story held and like how they were going to continue to build that world. I've liked every character that they've like introduced so far. Like
maybe it was me struggling with the subtitles for 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good point. When they brought it back to that planet, and I got over it quickly though. So what we're talking about when they go back to Cassian's original planet. Anybody know that planet starts with a K? Because
Kaija.
Nope, we're off, man. We didn't come prepared. So when they go back to that planet, it's a bunch of kids and they're speaking like a different language, and both me and Tim had the same issue where we're like, wait a minute, why are my subtitles broken? Like they're having full-on conversations.
I can see what droids say. I can't see what they're saying.
Right, but then
add up to me.
I quickly understood that like, okay, this is intentional. Like they just want us to know what these kids are doing based on their actions and their body language, and like this was an artistic choice. So it didn't bother me. I thought it was actually
once I found out it wasn't my fault, I didn't care. Like it was okay.
Right.
At the time, I was like, I was so concerned, like I'm missing part of the show because the subtitles are messed up.
I had that fear for a second for sure too. But yeah, I mean, I just think that every character they brought in so far, whether it be like Bix, I thought was an awesome little like side character for Cassian to kind of like she's the connection to the outside world. She's the good friend. Probably a former love interest. There's definitely a little bit of a flame there. So like that character was awesome. Her current love interest, Tim with 2 M's, like that guy was super funny. Like, and I love the role he played. Bro, dude, the droid though, B2, its name is B2 Emo. Are you kidding me right now? The second B2.
Are we loving droids now?
Bro, what do you mean? Okay, hold on. Let's not throw a blanket statement that I don't like droids. I don't like humanoid droids.
He's not droidist.
You don't like
No, the second B2 Emo went on the screen, I paused the show and texted Josiah. I'm like, does this red robot exist to break my heart? Because it's gonna. I know it. He's so 100%. Adorable. It's exactly what I said. And like that's what he's here for. He's so cute. He's so reluctant. I love those droids. I love BB-8. I love DO. I love R2D2. In my eyes, the more humanoid a droid gets, the less I give a shit. Like I just don't care. I want you making funny beeps, and I want you to be sad and cute. Like that's what I care about. Man,
I can't wait until John and Courtney go back to Disney and craft their own B2. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, dude, for sure. B2 Emo. And what a great, I mean, the name's a little on the nose. Like he's super, super sad and like very, tripping over his words, but his name is literally B2 Emo. Oh my God.
I don't know who voices that. That's what I got to figure out.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure.
I can look that up at some point here while we're going. I'm like, I can't put my finger on who that is.
It's really good.
It is. It's very different again. I love the way they invent new droids.
They're crushing
every
it.
time we get a new series or new movie, like BB-8, right? Like that was a big change when Force Awakens dropped.
BD1
to a degree. Yeah, K2, totally
Right.
different again in style. And
100%.
we get that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Dio, right? Like Rise of Skywalker.
Even though K2 is not my cup of tea, I respect it. Like, oh, that's a cool different droid. Like I get it. Like I'm in.
Yeah, for
cool.
sure. Diego Luna is Cassian Andor, definitely a bright spot among many in Rogue One, but really awesome to see this guy get to be the focal point of a series that's going to be the longest running to date series on Disney Plus for Star Wars,
Right.
or Marvel for that matter, to date again. But he's also, I believe, a producer on this, so he's really got his hands in the Play-Doh, so to speak, and he plays this character so well. I gotta say,
and it's a very clearly a different. I almost said Diego. It's a very different Andor than we got in Rogue One, and they start that off perfectly. What's the first scene in Rogue One? Andor straight up ices the dude. He just kills a guy. Like he gets information out of him and then just kills him. Like relentless, in the beginning of this, he ends up killing somebody and like did it by accident and was like super afraid and like remorseful and then kills another guy and is panicked. And the whole first arc of the first 3 episodes is like this guy just did something he doesn't know how to deal with and now he has to try to like cover his tracks and get the hell out of there, right? So like the very first thing he does in both movies, like it's a perfect dichotomy for the person he is at that point.
Yeah. I kept thinking for all the flashback sequences, what he says in Rogue One, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. And like, oh my gosh, gotta love that stuff. So Diego, I'm really, really excited to get just more of him and what that arc looks like as he references a lot of this in Rogue One. He says, we've all done things on behalf of the rebellion. We've been saboteurs, assassins, informants. We're going to see that, right? This is that playing out over these 5 years before we get Rogue One, him joining the Rebel Alliance, all of that. It's going to be really exciting. Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen, I believe. Stellan, we see him in the Thor movies and the Avengers. Way back, if you go back, he's in Pirates of the Caribbean as well. Always enjoyed his on-screen time. I think he plays a nice role in this. Star Wars typically has like that almost always older mentor role, whether it's Han Solo in the later trilogy or Force Awakens, I should say, or Woody Harrelson in Solo, A Star Wars Story. There's always that guy. And I feel like that's what we've got here, right? He's going to take Cassian under his wing. Yeah. But what we saw so far, what do we think of their chemistry? Tim, you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. The guy who flies in on the planet and then shoots over on he escapes with them. I liked him a lot. He was probably one of the things that made me really enjoy this. Probably one of my favorite characters, I think.
Oh, Stellan
Just the way he kind of carries himself. He comes in, he just has everything under control, and he's like, Cassian kind of thinks that he's slick with it. And you see that in a lot of things he does when he first meets up with his buddy, and he's like, starts explaining to him like his alibi, and the guy just like catches on, and like you can kind of see that he feels like, he can talk his way out of everything. It was referenced a few times. And Stellan just comes in or what's the guy's name? Is it Stellan in the show?
No, that's his real name.
What's his name in the show?
Luthen.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if we've actually heard his name at all yet, or if
I don't think so.
I think it's just in the casting.
I just love how he comes in and he just like he has this presence about him, and he just knows what he's doing.
Right.
And I love that, and he kind of put Cassian in his place, like, hey. Like
it was such a cool scene when they first meet, and like you can just tell what he's doing. Like the rebellion, for all intents and purposes, maybe doesn't even really like exist yet, right? It's still a seed, it's still a spark, but like this is the spark of the rebellion. Like he is, let's fight these guys for real. But even before he drops that line, like you can just tell the breadcrumbs he's setting out there. It's like, I can tell you're good at this. Like we might be able to use that. Like you can tell he's bringing them into what's going to be the rebellion, and that's a really cool thing.
And I could argue that scene, if you're looking at the overall Star Wars, how everything plays out, is probably one of the most important scenes to set up the rest of every other episode.
Yeah, for sure.
We're seeing, obviously not the Rebel Alliance yet, but pockets of the rebellion, right? The oppression. That's what this show is really going to show. Is why do we hate the Empire? Right? Like they're not just in charge of everything. That's not why we hate them. They're a bunch of a-holes, right? They oppress, they enslave, they do awful things across the galaxy. I love that this show is going to show us both of that, right? So we're going to see the seeds of what prompts the Rebel Alliance to get there, to get so mad, to want to actually fight and do what they do and come together, probably with Mon Mothma, which is Genevieve O'Reilly's character that we'll see in future episodes. What gets them there? We're seeing pockets of that. on the Imperial side of things, like
These
that
mall
monologue,
cops, dude.
Yeah.
I love
They're-
this. I love this little like rent-a-cop security force that's like
it's
just
interesting.
I'm a big fan of it because like you see like I think the guy's name is Cyril Karn, like our you know our bootlicker number one, the guy who goes out and you know takes this task on even when his upper manager tells him like don't worry about it, we don't want the attention, like whatever, these guys
Royally
just died.
messes it up.
Exactly. So he's just all about this. He wants to make this right and he wants to serve the Empire. And to me, that's just like, man, this is like perfect flashes of what like all of these generals end up being in the Empire. These straight up bootlickers who just want to appease Tarkin and who's the blue guy from Rebels, Thrawn and the Emperor. Like these guys just want to work their way up. And if you ever read a book like From a Certain Point of View, you get a lot of those generals and like their stories and how they just want to keep moving their way up. And like I wouldn't be surprised if we see this guy like in season 2 or later down the line as like a member of the Empire and like a general, like doing the same thing for the Empire. Like I'm sure either they're just trying to give us that vibe and show us that people want to be that, or this guy will be that in the future. Regardless, it's really cool to see.
It's just funny that like when I first saw him come up on screen, the first thing I thought is like, that's a guy that everyone knows at your work at some point. Like that person has been at your job. Like
For
maybe
sure.
not in Star Wars, but you've had that person at your work. Like that's the goody two shoes, has to do everything by the book and like will do what they want, even if someone tells them that's not how you're supposed to do it. But they
greater
think
good,
that they know the
yes.
correct way. They'll do it anyways.
Yeah.
Even though they're not supposed to. So I just thought it was funny because in my head, that's the first thing I thought is like, he exists at every workplace.
Dude, I did love when towards the end of the 3rd episode, they bombed that squad essentially. Like it was the bait and switch with Andor. And the look on his face, like I royally screwed this up.
Right.
Like I cost lives, all of this. Like I loved the acting there and the fear that he was really exuding.
Yeah,
I thought it was brilliant.
The whole time they were on that planet, like you can just tell how uneasy he was and how every move he made, he's like, "Oh my god, how bad did I just screw this up? Like I shouldn't even be here. Like please pull this out for me. Like North Squad, somebody come in, help me out. East Squad, where are you at?"
Yep.
Like literally sweating. So I thought that was super well done, and I just like to see that character and like what it looks like to be a rebellion or an Imperial bootlicker before you're actually awarded the black garb.
Right.
Yeah, that's brand new, at least in Star Wars lore, and I like it. And I was kind of almost like struggling to process it at first. I'm like, so how really are they tied? They're like the minor league of the Empire, right? Like,
yeah, like a private security force.
The wannabes.
Yeah.
Right, like
cops, like
the top prospect makes the cut. Maybe you can eventually be choked by Lord Vader. It's gonna be great.
4K force choke for you.
Adria Arjona as Bix Colleen. What a name, Bix Colleen. That's a Star Wars name Bix. If I ever heard one. Really, really liked her. Aside from Diego, she was Stellan was awesome too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
didn't have the screen time, I guess.
Was,
yeah, Stellan
Skarsgård
is just insane. If you never watched Chernobyl, like that's just where that it was sold to me, is that he's one of the best actors I've ever seen. Like he's insane.
He's great. Bix really adds a lot of depth to this. Overall, like you said, John, you touched on it. Like there's some history there with Cassian. What's that going to look like moving forward? I loved what we got from her. Really added a lot of that emotion to the overall underlying story.
Yep.
I'm curious that she blames Cassian for what happened to Tim with 2 M's.
Yeah.
Tim.
I don't think
Tim
so. I don't
worried about Tim.
She doesn't seem to be like a resentful type that would like hold a grudge against it. I don't know. I think she's an ally. I don't think she's...
I'm also curious if it comes back to, like all the people on the planet. Does it come back to them at all in the future episodes, or are they kind of like done?
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because we
I love when they were all hitting the metal on the outside and the monologue from that older lady. I don't recall her name. Kind of Cassian's almost like
guardian.
Almost mother.
Yeah, she took him when he was like 13 years old or whatever, like a very young child, and gave him a better life for the most part.
I love when she's talking about that and the intensity, and she said the problem is basically when it stops.
Yes.
Like what happens then. And I was like,
I thought her character was awesome in general. Like everything that I thought she was also very commanding, like a Stellan Skarsgård. I couldn't figure it out for the longest. I'm like, who is this? It's Mrs. Dursley from Harry Potter. Like that's the same actress.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. I'm like,
so
funny.
Yeah.
A quick shout out to Marissa, who's basically like fact checking for us. Cassian is a Canary.
Canary.
Yes.
Canary.
The lady's name is Marva, M-A-A. RVA. I do recall seeing that, I think, in the subtitles.
Yes.
Thank you, Marissa. Appreciate you.
For sure.
Is
Thanks for
Marissa the one that
fact
watched
check.
all the shows when we were talking the last time?
Yeah.
And now she's like a veteran Star Wars watcher.
She's legit, guys. I got to vouch for it. She jumped in with Star Wars Day on May the 4th, watched all of them, got involved with us, and then also went through Kenobi. By the way, she got up early too. So, dedication for sure. We're going to do MCU next. We're going to get her through the MCU. That's going to be the next obsession.
Quite the tall
I got to finish the MCU too.
Get ready, Marissa. It's going to be awesome. Anything else that comes to mind that we didn't cover for these episodes at all?
No, I think we went through it, man. The characters are awesome. The narrative that they're pitching here is really cool. I'm interested. I'm glad that it's going to be 12 episodes because we just got a taste of what's to come. We haven't gotten much about the overall narrative. We haven't gotten Mon Mothma yet. We know she's going to be a co-star of this show. So I'm pumped, man. I'm all in.
I mean, honestly, good.
No, go to
No, John just reminded me that it's 2 seasons as well, so it's going to be a super slow burn to start.
So it's 12 episodes, then another season.
Yep,
24 total.
Yes,
season
2. Right, season 2 will end right at the footsteps.
I better
of Rogue
it
One.
then, I guess, huh? I better force myself.
I see what you did there.
It got me in the mindset that slow burn for the first season's obvious at that point, then, right?
Right.
But
I'm sure there'll be highs.
It's slowly starting to get there, and I honestly one last thing I'll say is I do love how his childhood is going to play a big factor into how he builds it. It's like a synonymous build up, right?
Yeah, right.
His childhood build up with the rebel build up, and how he gets to be where he was, and what we see him in Rogue One. So I'm excited for that too. So
yeah, kind of like how we got
holding off series judgment, but
kind of like how we got in Kenobi, we with the lessons he learned in Anakin in that fight, back on what the heck's the planet, the Jedi planet, Coruscant. Back when they're just doing their fighting, and then the flash forward to where he's fighting Vader, those two simultaneous paths like that.
I definitely feel like when I was watching this, I felt like there's more of a mature tone to the whole thing too.
For sure.
And if you guys felt that way, I mean, you see a brothel at the beginning, you see, the first real hookup, I would say, where you physically see
two people in bed together, right?
Yeah.
100%.
So it's different to me, but they just feel like you set the tone from the beginning of that happening. Him essentially shooting the guy in the head after just killing the one guy. I just feel like I like the tone of it.
I would say that Rogue One probably held the candle for the most mature tone up until now, but this one's already outpacing that. Like you said, we're getting their mature relationships. This isn't Star Wars is always back and forth between whether or not it's is this for kids or is this for adults, or find the middle ground and just love what you love. But this would be a tough sell for a kid so far.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't let my kid watch it. I mean,
I don't think. For what it's worth, we're even talking about it being a slow burn so far. I don't know that this holds some kids' interests.
No.
No. A 10-year-old me, I love everything Star Wars. But the average kid around that age, I don't know. No. Probably not.
Yeah, and it's not even that it's overly gruesome or sexual or anything like that.
No,
it's just I just don't think I don't think the themes and the narrative would hold a kid's attention.
It's all theme,
I think they've done it in a tasteful way, right? Everyone kind of knows my feelings on Game of Thrones. I'm get out of town. It's just not for me. It's just not for exactly. I love it so much. I don't. So anyway, with this, some of the things we talked about that are a little bit more mature, if you will, they've done it beautifully. I'm totally good with that, right? Especially when you typically do gear Star Wars towards kids. I hope that always remains, unless I could see them maybe one day going for something maybe a little bit more intense, but I also can't ever see them going to a point where we're going to have a rated R Star Wars.
No,
because
I think
you're not going to do that. You're eliminating audience, right?
For sure. They'll always reserve that stuff for your comics and your novels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That stuff's out there, man. The Vader comics can be incredibly graphic and gruesome and stuff like that. So that stuff's out there for people who want to see it. I just don't think they're gonna scratch the surface with it here and just give you a little bit of those themes, but they're never gonna go all in on it.
Courtney in the chat, I could speak for the average 10-year-old, aka me. It doesn't capture attention. Love it.
Yep.
I love that.
All right. Closing thoughts on first 3 episodes of Andor. We'll wrap things up. Again, thanks for tuning in at twitch.tv/thegeekiverse. We appreciate you getting in the chat. Hang out if you're interested. We have Busy Sticks coming up, our all video game talk show. Yeah, we've got lots to get to there, lots to unpack, lots to catch up on. I have so much to say. We're going to have a blast talking about The Last of Us, Steam Deck, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2's beta, and other topics. Tim, JT, and John, we good to sign off for now?
Yeah, man.
I'm good. I'm excited.
Can't wait for more.
Yeah, wait. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Me too. Join us every week. We're going to record a reaction weekly right with Andor. We're going to shoot to do this as close to Wednesday, if not on Wednesday, as possible. So we appreciate you tuning in. Again, Twitch, any social media outlet, youtube.com/thegeekiverse, and anywhere that you download podcasts. So for Tim, JT, and John, I'm Josiah. This has been Built on Hope. We'll catch you soon. Stick around for Busy Sticks.